Welcome to the Renegade Nutrition Podcast, where we discuss all things wellness.
I'm Eleni Welch, nutritionist.
And I'm Kay Boyer, health enthusiast. Welcome back, Renegades.
Welcome, Renegades.
Welcome. In this episode with a lady, she's going to teach you to live to 300.
Ooh, that would be great.
That was good. No, I joke, kiddos. This is how to just live longer. Longevity.
Longevity.
Yeah.
Yes. 120 is
120
our goal.
That's a good goal. I do think
It's
that's
our
like,
goal.
it's like a realistic for us when we get there.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can do that.
Yeah. These episodes, so I just recently virtually attended. What a time to be alive.
Yes, it is. Yes.
I can
went
virtually
to an event
attend.
across the world.
Yes, I virtually attended. It looked beautiful. I would have loved to be there in person. The Health and Longevity Summit hosted by Commune.
Oh, yes. Oh, by Commune. Yes.
Commune. Lots of really renowned health specialist speakers. Mark Hyman was there.
Yes.
Kara Fitzgerald, Sarah Gottfried, like
Zach Bush.
Bush,
top.
Jeffrey Bland.
Was Dave Asprey?
No.
Not there. Okay, not this one. Okay.
I feel like he kind of does his own thing.
Okay. He's a renegade.
Yeah. In a way, yeah. And maybe just not as like community oriented.
Okay.
I don't know.
Yeah.
For sure. But it seems like he kind of puts on his own events and doesn't really do like group events like this.
Okay. He's busy.
But otherwise,
yeah,
all of the people that I follow and respect were all there as speakers at once, and I got to watch a bunch of their talks, and I got to get a bunch of takeaways that now I'm going to share with you guys. So
I bet you were so happy.
I was happy.
This is nice. Like your happy place.
Yeah.
Just listening to people be healthy.
Yes. And give tips. And I was just telling Kate before we even started this episode, like I learn new things every time I do one of these. And some of the information is like, yep, I've known that for years. And some of it is like, wow, no way.
Okay.
Like,
well, you teach us all of it because who knows if it's all new to us too. I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's easy to take for granted what we already know and forget that other people may not know it. So.
Yes, like the little things, like don't eat so much sugar and get a good night of sleep. Like those, like the little things, or like get sunshine.
Right.
You're right. That is taken for granted.
Yeah, that like we're like, of course you do those things, but not everybody knows that those things are important.
Yeah.
And even our listeners, like, I never want to assume that people are listening to every single episode on here. Yeah. So I don't mind repeating information from episode to episode to episode because it might be like a one-off episode for them and it might be the only time they're hearing that information. So for our loyal listeners who are listening to every episode, you get the benefits of repetition, which is the best way to learn.
Yes, we do. I always need retold. So keep telling me like, yep.
Yeah. And for helpful. Our one-off listeners, you get the benefit of hearing all the information anyway.
Yep. I love it. I'm here for it. And I'm grateful.
Well, first off, before I dive into it, hello to our listeners in the Netherlands.
Netherlands. All right. I love that. I was like, how do you guys find us? Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And that's where my husband's corporate business headquarters are located.
Oh, okay.
Aegon is the company he works for. Okay. Again, what a time to be alive that you can just work virtually for a company rooted in the Netherlands. Yes. And I really want to visit. I'm like,
yes,
somebody send him there for some reason, and I'm going to come with him.
Absolutely, that's the way to travel
because it sounds beautiful.
Yeah,
and I want to go.
Yeah.
Here's a fun fact about the Netherlands.
Okay.
According to the 2013 United Nations World Happiness Report,
the
Netherlands was ranked one of the happiest countries in the world.
What? What's
up? Ranked fourth happiest out of all the countries in the world.
I love this. Okay, Netherlands, I'm now going to study you and your lifestyle and just see like what y'all do to be happy. I love it.
Well, the next fun fact about them is something that probably makes them happy and maybe it wouldn't make you happy.
Let's hear it.
The Dutch people of the Netherlands eat an average of 14.3 kilos of cheese per person per year, which is roughly 31.5 pounds of cheese a year. Kay might cease to exist.
I pooped myself, but I'm happy. I don't know. So wait, I think most people would think eating that much cheese does make you happy. So I agree. Other than my stomach not liking it,
yes,
that would make me happy.
That much cheese would make me very happy.
That's awesome.
That's what I was thinking when I was reading those facts. I'm like, gosh, no wonder they're so happy. And it's probably like wonderful fresh cheese. I agree. You know, like it's quality, not like processed, terrible.
Yes.
Dyed cheese.
Right. It's like a little living organism that you get to partake with.
Can't you just imagine it?
Yeah, I'd want some.
I'm picturing like open, beautiful fields and happy grazing and animals.
Tulips.
Yeah. And wooden clogs.
Yes.
I don't know if we've captured it, but that's what I'm picturing something like that. And it's beautiful and it makes me happy just thinking about it. So no wonder they're all so happy.
I know. Let's go visit.
Let's.
Okay.
All right. Well, thank you to our Netherlands listeners. And you are already the 4th happiest country in the world. So you're already being renegades.
Yes. And message us what the secret is. And we'll
tell us what the secret is besides cheese. Yeah. Why are you also happy?
Yes. Besides cheese.
Besides cheese. Impressive. Okay. So now we're going to talk about things I learned from the Longevity Summit. So to preface, everything I learned I got from somebody who was presenting there. So none of this is like, actually no information I share on this podcast is like my original knowledge.
Yes. Okay, wait. Albert Einstein has the quote. What is it? All creativity is just hiding your source. There's nothing new under the sun.
Nothing new under the sun. Right? Even for like the people that I learned from, they learned it from somebody else. Right. And they learned it from a textbook. And then they all learned it from God. So
right.
All wisdom comes from above. Nothing is like new or original.
Right.
I was going to say like none of this is like my original information, but I'm not really ever sharing. I'm sharing information I've learned from research.
Right.
And from other like functional health professionals in the world, and they all learned it from somebody else too. So
right. I think that is like we're like the modern era of information, right? Mm-hmm. So it's like all the information is just now like a cesspool of information, and when you pluck it out, you can see if it resonates with you, see if it seems right, if it's reasonable. Go back to the studies of people looking. You're right, and then it's all good.
So in particular, this information I got came from the Longevity and Health Summit, but of course those people all learned it from somewhere else.
So just Google where it came from, friends, if you're curious about something. Yes. A part of it.
Okay, so today's podcast will talk about the longevity piece of the summit. And then there were a bunch of different health aspects I also learned from the summit, and I'm going to break those down into multiple podcasts. So there's a lot of information on gut health and mental health and all of those beautiful things that we already talk about all the time. And I learned new information from them, and we're going to distill it into several podcasts. So.
Oh, I like this. Oh, because it's just made me think of something. When I was doing... just a conversation with friends back home, I was like, oh yeah, because I want to live to be 100. I always tell my kids that because they're like, why do you eat healthy? And I was like, because I want to live to 100. Like, that's kind of my joke at home. Like, but then my one friend was like, I don't want to live to 100. Heavens, I don't want to be old and crippled and feel bad.
Oh, let's talk about that.
Right, so that's why I wanted to bring this up, because that's what I said. I was like, oh, no. I want to be climbing mountains at 100, friends. Right. Like, that's why I want to live to 120, because I'm still going to be kicking it at 100.
That's right.
Right.
That's right.
So good. So living to 120.
We'll talk about that.
Well,
we're going to talk about that. Absolutely. And one of the biggest points I think to dive into with that is that although we all age, we don't all age the same.
Very true.
Right? So 100 means different things to different people depending on their mindset. Kay has a healthy mindset about living to 100, which we're also going to talk about. Ooh. How our mindset influences our cellular expression and our DNA and our genetics.
Mind-blowing.
Yes, that is, I think, a separate podcast topic, but I'll brush it today. But
I love it.
So when we talk about age, like chronological age,
trips around the sun.
Yeah. It's like the thing you can't control, right? You can't control how many years on Earth you've lived,
right?
And do live. But what you can control is your biological age, which is how fast our bodies are aging in terms of like taking on the general characteristics of age. So chronological age, you have no control over how long or how short that is.
Yes.
Biological age, we have a lot of control over. So when we're talking about longevity, that's what we're talking about. Not only increasing our chronological age by doing the things to keep us healthy, knowing when it's our time, and there may be things that happen that we just don't have control over, but also increasing our biological age so that when we do live longer, we're climbing mountains, not like...
Yeah, not just sitting in a chair.
Disintegrating.
Letting time pass.
Right, disintegrating in a pool of cat hair.
Yes, yeah, always a cat around.
So chronological age defines our lifespan. Biological age defines our health span.
Health span, I like that.
And I would rather have a shorter lifespan with a longer health span than a short health span and a long lifespan.
Ain't that the truth? Yes.
So I think that's when people who are like, I don't want to live to be 100, that's what they're imagining is a long lifespan without a long health span. I wouldn't want that either.
True. Fair.
But there are ways to have both.
Yes, I was going to say, so our renegades, we're here for the party for both.
That's right.
Like,
that's
teach
right.
me the way.
Right. So biological aging, so our health span, biologically aging poorly is the biggest risk factor for all of the chronic diseases. So if we can delay biological aging by 7 years, you can cut chronic disease by 50%.
Wow. Okay, and the major diseases being like heart disease, diabetes,
Alzheimer's,
those ones.
Cancer.
Okay. Cancer, okay.
Kidney disease.
The big ones.
All of those. So biblically, God set the lifespan of humans at 120 years and also has throughout time allowed some humans to live longer. So that's why 120 is in my mind. Based on the scriptures, my thinking is that the average lifespan should be 120 because it
like that feels like it's true to God and nature.
Right. Yeah. And every once in a while he allows people to like live longer.
Yeah.
But that was kind of the limit he set because at the beginning of the Bible, people were living to like 930 years old.
Yeah, it's all Methuselah or whatever.
Yeah, and then eventually he was like, all right, I'm tired of people living so long. You guys are exhausting.
Maybe Methuselah was also like, hey, I'm out, guys. Like,
peace, late.
I'm good.
Peace. But God also gave us free will, and we have used that free will to destroy our earth and our food supply. So and our bodies. So as a consequence, we have a much shorter lifespan than we were originally intended to have. So for most countries, the lifespan is anywhere between 70 to 80 years.
Okay.
Where, I mean, if you take a spiritual view, it should be around 120.
Yeah, and people at our best.
Yeah, at our best.
At our, most cohesive with nature, God's self. Like, yes.
And our lifespan is getting shorter. For the first time ever, this newest generation is not expected to outlive their parents.
Okay, this is profound. I heard that the other day. That is profound, listeners. Like, this is a problem. We have outlived every generation before us until this current one.
This current one is expected to have a shorter lifespan than the generation before them.
It kind of shows we're not doing everything right, friends.
Yeah, if all the other signs of unhealthiness that are rampant in this country aren't enough to prove it.
Yes.
We now are actively predicting that our kids will not live as long as we do, which is pretty pathetic considering that we're dying anywhere from 40 to 50 years before we technically should.
Yes.
And now our kids are expected to die even sooner.
And this, I had a talk with someone where, so the thing that has made us live longer in our modern world has been our modern medicine, right? Which has been awesome to save us from acute disease. Now what's killing us younger is the chronic disease. And I've heard that in other, like, let's say like Aboriginal tribes, a lot of times it would be that acute disease that would kill them younger. But if they can make it to the adulthood and get past the acute disease, they live forever because they have a healthier lifestyle.
Right.
So death here, it is that balance in the modern world of acute versus chronic.
Right.
And now it's the chronic.
Things like not having access to clean drinking water or food that's not spoiled. You know, antiseptic techniques, things like that have helped us live longer in some ways, but we also are now destroying every part of our planet that feeds and nourishes us. And so, the acute care can only take you so far
Yep.
Yeah.
And then we'll suffer. I did hear this, that the soap was the best medical thing ever invented, was soap. Anyway, I heard that.
Especially for doctors like who weren't washing their hands in between patients and were causing a lot of infection and death back in the day.
Mm-hmm. And who knew?
Yeah.
Wash your hands.
Oh, after I just touched this dead person, I shouldn't go and help a mother delivering her baby, like without washing my hands. Yeah. That was a huge cause of maternal death.
Oh my gosh. And now we wouldn't even think, like, scrub your hands.
No, well, and I don't know why you would have thought that before. Gross.
Yeah,
like,
gross. I think my son has the same concept of like, I just touched cat poop and now I'm going to eat. And I'm like, wait, what are you doing? So I think it's an evolution of our brains.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think, the question every person needs to ask themselves when they're deciding like what they want their biological health span to be is, how do you want to live your life? I think that's an important question. For me, it's like obvious, but it's not obvious for everybody. Not everybody has a life that they enjoy. Maybe some people don't want to live the life that they're living longer. That's something to dive into as well that we'll talk about a little bit. But for me, it's like, don't you want to live your final years in excellent health, still active, feeling good, contributing your wisdom to the world? Like, I want to be 110 and still contributing my wisdom to the world in a beautiful way.
We will have like 10,000 podcasts out by then. Keep listening, renegades. We'll keep going.
Like, I want to live in contribution and service to the world. And I want to be able to do that well.
Yes.
Until I am very old and tired.
Yep. Like, live fiercely until the bitter end.
But instead, I think a lot of us, like, we hit 60 and we're like, all right, I'm going to retire in a few years. I'm going to go to Florida and I'm going to like waste away in
I'm getting old. Yeah.
In a pool of humidity and cat hair.
Yeah. Cat hair.
So I just like, to me, the choice is obvious, but again, that's not something I want to take for granted. I don't think everybody feels that way.
Yeah. I do know what you're saying, that I do see some people that out there who feel like they are just enduring till the end. And it's more of like a suffering to just like, I'll stay alive as long as I can, and I'll just stay alive, where it's like, no, take control, take choices, do what you can, like do anything in the world to make it better for yourself. And anyway.
Yeah, I want to change how we feel about a long life and health span.
Yeah, that'll be awesome.
So here's some of what I learned about longevity. So this was from Dr. Mark Hyman. So this is from his presentation. The next bits I'll be sharing are all things I learned from his presentation, and some of them I already knew, but I'm going to reshare these facts with you. So 6 in 10 Americans have a chronic disease. Only 12% of Americans are metabolically healthy, meaning 88% of Americans are not. So that's depressing. And the first thing that we need to change in this quest for
You're right, because I'm sure they're not feeling good, and then I'm sure they don't want to keep living longer.
Who wants to keep living that way?
Wait, and then can we make the connection, sorry, really quick, that like lifestyle is affecting that feeling?
Right.
Like, that's what's really interesting, and maybe I'm just going to be on my little soapbox right now, but like, and maybe our listeners are more on my side, but I'll talk to people in the public, and there is no connection between lifestyle and how they feel, and their body and food. I'm like, nothing? Like, okay. Anyway, maybe that's just like, if you're listening to our podcast, you understand that. But like, come on, folks.
The most basic equation is input equals output.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, again, it's information I think we take for granted that everybody knows. And that's why we started this podcast, is because not everybody knows it. Somebody's going to be hearing this information. It'll all be for the first time. So.
You're right. Okay, so this is for you then.
This is for you, the people who have not yet drawn that connection.
Yes.
Yes, if you were one of the 88% that is not metabolically healthy, then it's directly correlated to your lifestyle.
We've got some podcasts for you.
We've got some podcasts for you. Just flip through any of the like 56 episodes we have. So here's some important facts. First of all, getting into kind of the microbiome side of things.
Okay.
About genome and epigenome health.
She's going to talk nerdy to me.
I'm going to talk nerdy. So 90% of our health is not dependent on our genes, but what we do to our genes.
Oh my gosh. So I'm giving this a little clap. blow your mind a little bit. That, and you gave a statistic. I feel that all the time. Anyone I talk to, that they really are just like, oh, you just have good genetics. Like, oh, you just have good genes. Like, I get that all the time. I'm like, friends,
I kind of don't.
Like, I do lots and lots of things to make sure that I have. Okay.
Yep.
Yes.
Yep. So our exposome is what we do to our genes. That contributes to 90% of our health. So 10% of our health is uncontrollably controlled by our genes.
Okay.
90% of our health outcomes is influenced by our daily decisions.
That's a huge portion. So there is something to like, yes, you have to play the genetics you were given. You have to play like, what are you predisposed to? That is very true. 10% very true. But 90% your lifestyle can help. So
90%.
We have good control.
So the like, oh, I have genetics for cancer. I have genetics for heart disease. I have genetics for kidney disease. I'm going to get it. I'm going to get it. I'm going to get it. No, that's actually not true. You have control over 90% of that. So DNA methylation is the most critical part of regulating your gene expression. And DNA methylation is influenced by diet, exercise, intrauterine exposures, so things you were exposed to in the womb. Don't have control over that, but you have control over all the rest of what happens for the rest of your life. So diet, exercise, intrauterine exposures, environmental toxins, etc. And it can affect offspring for generations. So toxicity from chemical exposures in one generation can cause imprints on DNA generations later. We're going to talk about how many generations in a second. Wow. But it can also be undone. And when it's undone, those changes can also last for generations as long as there's not new re-exposure to various harmful chemicals.
Wow. Cool.
So what you do in your life determines what genes you turn off and on. So just because you have the genetics for a certain health condition doesn't mean you have to express that health condition. You can actually flip those genetics off. So whether you turn on longevity genes or aging genes is totally up to you. So you can't change the genes you have, but you can change your epigenome. And everything we do controls our epigenome. So your DNA is listening to your thoughts, literally, which is why I really liked what Kay said at the beginning, is like, no, I'm still going to be climbing mountains at 100, right? Your DNA is literally listening to your thoughts.
Yes, the mind-brain-body connection. It's huge. It's huge.
Our thoughts, our food, every step we take, every conversation we have, every relationship we are in, these things all control our epigenome. So it's not just food you eat and exercise. It's your thoughts.
Yes.
Your mental health.
This is big.
The relationships you are in.
Stress. How you handle stress.
Sleep.
How you value yourself to handle all these things.
Sleep.
Yep. Sunshine.
Everything controls our epigenome. Yes. So I think that can be really hard to grasp for people. Because we just don't emphasize things like relationships in the same way that we emphasize things like our diet.
Right.
And I'm a nutritionist, not a marriage counselor. So I emphasize the food parts of things, right?
Yeah, because that's what you know.
Because that's what I know. Yes. But the more I spend time studying this information, the more I realize really nutrition is one piece of the puzzle. If we don't control the other pieces of the puzzle, we can only get so far.
So true. In our episode with Christopher Lee Maher about how stress is even a huge, like you can eat right, you can do all the right things, but if you have loads of stress and traumatic events
that you haven't worked through.
Yes, you have to heal that to be able to get your body. And that's sort of that Chinese medicine of the meridian lines to have like your lymph and your blood to be able to go through and heal your whole body. If you have things that are holding back that energy from flowing, you need to heal that. So there are layers, and then that's when it gets messy and dirty, right? Like no one wants to deal with the darkness. We would just want to like eat an orange, you know, but it's
we want the easier. It is easier.
Eat a vitamin. Yeah. But it's like, no, you've got to deal with those, knots in your body and your soul. Like it's all connected. connected.
So there's actually some research that has shown that loving, connected relationships and conversations can actually flip detrimental and harmful genes off. How cool is that? And that toxic relationships can flip detrimental and harmful genes on.
Oh my.
So
love is the answer, Eleni.
Yes.
Oh my.
So that's like a whole separate podcast, right? And I'm not the expert on that. And now I have some access to some of the experts in that. And I know who those people are. So hopefully we can convince them to be on our little podcast.
Let's do it.
But I just think that's a really important takeaway, is to understand we have to address every area of our life. And unfortunately, if you are in a toxic relationship, as much as you can control that and set boundaries around that, it's going to determine your health. So I think so many people live just complacently.
Just getting through.
Whether those relationships are affecting them in the workplace or at home, with friends, with family. You can actually set boundaries around toxic relationships and contain them and find more positive, loving relationships. And those decisions influence your epigenome, which determines your lifespan and your health span and your susceptibility to chronic disease. Like, it's just very mind-blowing. It matters.
There are two ideas that kind of come to mind for that. Is the one quote that helped me kind of set boundaries with people were you get in life what you tolerate. So to kind of that idea of like, well, okay, I don't want to get this anymore, so I'm not going to tolerate it anymore. And that's a way to kind of get yourself a boundary. And then the second one, it's out of my brain, Eleni, it left. I don't remember.
I'll think of it. Yeah, I think the quote I've heard before is, you don't get what you want, you get what you tolerate.
Yes,
right?
yes.
Like, that's a very real principle. So if there are people that are draining you, maybe stop spending so much time around those people.
I remember my thought with boundaries and people. The other thing too is to, like, as a female, like, I don't know, like they say the feminine energy is more nurturing and people pleasing, or kind of that, where like my husband is just like, they don't treat me right, I'm not gonna be around them, and I'm like, no,
they need
me, and like kind of like pull out of that masculine energy that all of us have in us to be like, no, like, I deserve to live in peace. I deserve to not be talked to badly. I can value and love myself enough to know I'm going to put up a boundary so I can be best for myself, so I can be best for my family, my community, my world.
Right.
So there's something to also that self-worth piece that, like, my husband just innately has, where I have to work at. Like, oh no, I can value myself enough to say no.
Right.
Mind-blowing.
Yeah. So the main takeaway number 1 is that aging as we know it is abnormal.
Okay.
Let that sink in.
Okay.
The aging as we know it
in America
is abnormal. Okay. And we can increase our lifespan. And this increase in lifespan and health span is dependent on every part of our daily existence, from the food we eat, the steps we take, to the thoughts we have, to the relationships we enjoy or don't enjoy. So that's takeaway number 1.
Yeah, it's all the little things. That's the thing too. Have you heard this quote? The big things are the little things. It's so true. It's like you really just have to watch every little thing, not in a bad way of like, is that we're
not like living in a bubble,
right? And not in fear, not in that. More of just like a really do live in the moment and take care of all those little things because they matter. More in a beautiful way.
Yeah.
Not in a scared, micro-attentive kind of way.
Yes, right. Not like locking yourself in your house.
Right.
And never leaving. More in like a mindfulness, right? Yes. Like what you're describing.
Like intentional.
Being present in the moment and really observing. I think one of the best ways before we move on, just to address that relationship piece, is just to be really honest about how you feel when you walk away from a conversation with somebody. So do you walk away feeling happy, nourished, loved, uplifted, positive, or do you walk away feeling drained, irritated, anxious,
belittled,
angry? We kind of talked about this with our 3 simple tips to be healthier and happier when we talked about the news and how does the news make you feel. So just apply this to another part of your life, which is, okay, when I have a conversation with that person, being very mindful when you walk away from it. It's not just leaving a conversation with somebody and not paying attention to how you feel, right? This is like listening to your body, tuning in. Yeah. Is like, how do I feel when I walk away from those conversations with this person? Do I chronically feel drained and taxed and anxious and angry and irritated? Or do I chronically feel happy, uplifted, positive, joyful? And start paying attention to those interactions in your life, because if there's people in your life where those interactions are chronically negative, it's time to start setting some boundaries with those people, right? Yep. And maybe it requires you to make some pretty hard life decisions, but it just depends on what your priority is and what takes priority. So if your health and your lifespan and your health span are your priority,
because you're worth it.
Because you're worth it. There's some hard decisions to make. I'm not saying it's easy. I'm just saying it's time to start evaluating it, right? I've had to make those hard decisions, and I've not always been able to make the ones I want to make, because sometimes life just demands that we stay in things a little bit longer than we'd like to. But in general, I think it's best for people to evaluate those things constantly, and not from a place of judgment, not judgment for that person. Right. It's just how they're making you feel and their interactions with you. So it's nothing to do with like good people, bad people. It's just how
it fits for you.
Yeah. How those relationships
and growing for you.
And any circumstance that you're in. So the job you're going to, do you leave it feeling positive, uplifted, encouraged, empowered by the end of the day? Or do you leave it feeling negative, irritated, dragged down, deprecated? Like just paying attention to all those things in your life, even to the little things. How does this exercise make me feel? Like, how do I feel at the end of this exercise routine?
Wait, maybe at the end of it.
At the end of it. In the middle of
it, you might not like it.
At the end of it. I don't know. I think that's easy. How does this food make me feel? How do I feel at the end of this meal when I eat it? Do I feel good? Do I feel uplifted? Do I feel energized? These are the same questions you can ask for almost every part of your life. Yep.
And value your own feelings. Because that's what I grew up of, like, doesn't matter how you feel. You need to think through everything was logical and like more stoic. As I'm getting older, I'm like, oh no, I need to honor my feelings, and I can do things that are better for my feelings. Like it's a very weird. Growing up is wild. Maturity is crazy.
Yeah. So that's a very rough overview of some of what I learned from Dr. Mark Hyman's presentation, much combined with my own input and thoughts. So yeah. I've added quite a bit of my own flavoring to that.
We have that. We have a little we have inputs. Just ask us.
Hey there, Renegades. Eleni here, briefly interrupting this episode of the Renegade Nutrition Podcast. I wanted to highlight a company that Kay and I have recently discovered that we love, and that company is Bulletproof. Bulletproof sells high-quality nutritional supplements, and every product that Kay and I have tried from them personally, we have found to be excellent. It's important when you choose a supplement that it contain the bioactive forms in order for it to be effective, and Bulletproof has just the right forms in just the right amounts. Right now, if you go to bulletproof.com and use the code RENEGADE15 at checkout, you can receive 15% off your order. That's Renegade, RENEGADE 15. Use that code at checkout to get 15% off, and we'll earn a small commission too. Thanks for your support. All right, back to this week's episode of the Renegade Nutrition Podcast. And then Dr. Kara Fitzgerald, in her talk, she talked about the 5 habits that are messing with your DNA expression and making you age faster. Oh. So I'm going to talk about those. The 5 habits that are messing with your DNA expression and making you age faster.
Oh, I want to know. I'm putting these in my noggin.
So epigenetics, for people who don't know, is the study of what turns genes on and what turns genes off. And changes to gene expression are at the root of aging. So even known genetic mutations like the BRCA, the BRCA gene, the one that can control breast cancer and ovarian cancer in women, I think that's a pretty well-known genetic mutation. I think most people are probably familiar with that.
I am not, but I'm not actually in the loop. So, but most people, so yes.
If you're not, so the BRCA, like 1 and 2 genes, are genes that can control the expression of cancer, specifically like breast and ovarian and uterine cancer. and cervical cancer in women. And so I think the story women have been told for generations is if you have that genetic mutation, then you are going to get, most likely, not for sure, but most likely, you're going to get breast cancer or cervical cancer or ovarian cancer.
Okay.
That is the rhetoric.
It's a scary thing. Like then you look at your DNA and you're like, oh, bleep, I have it. I have this DNA.
I'm going to get.
That's how it feels, like no control.
This is the thoughts, right? Remember, we just talked about thoughts control your genetic expression. So what you tell your body is going to happen controls what happens in it. So for women who are told, well, now you have a 70% increased risk of developing these types of cancer, what are the thoughts that are now feeding their cellular expression, right? And I think the BRCA is
self-fulfilled prophecy.
It's a pretty like well-known genetic mutation, especially in women's health. And maybe it's more near to me because my grandmother had breast cancer. You know, all of her sisters that lived for a long time had breast cancer. My mom has had breast cancer. So it's like in my purview of genetic
You're
stuff,
very aware. Yes.
I'm aware of how that gene can affect us. So I think it's like that gene, that BRCA gene, can actually be subject to gene expression changes through the epigenome. So those genes can be positively influenced by key nutrients like polyphenols, antioxidants, and flavonoids. So things like resveratrol, ECGC, curcumin, quercetin, genistein, which is from like soy, sulforaphane from broccoli, and all of those good cruciferous vegetables. Those things can turn a functioning BRCA1 gene back on and prevent cancer. So I don't think we've really been told that, right? Like it's more like you're told if you have that gene, you're at greatly increased risk of cancer. And this gene, being told they have this gene is why a lot of women get like elective mastectomy. So before they ever have cancer, they have their breasts removed to prevent getting cancer. But how many of those women would have chosen that path if they had been told you can actually influence the genetic expression of this gene with diet and lifestyle? I don't know how many would still choose to do the surgery because not everybody wants to change their lives. But that's a pretty dramatic way to change your life. Like maybe you're not making dietary changes, but that's a pretty dramatic change physiologically.
Then I feel like it would come to the belief that they wouldn't like think that the lifestyle would actually change it. Then it feels like they don't believe in the outcome.
So I think that that's a really significant example that you could, even with that gene, which we have been told for a long time, generations, that if you have that gene, you will most likely get cancer and you should do crazy things like removing your reproductive organs, removing your breasts in order to prevent getting the cancer. Like to me, if I had the choice between making a dietary change or making a physiological change like that, I would make the dietary change. And that's not to cast judgment on other decisions made, just that I don't think we're being given the full story.
That's what I was going to say. It's like you're not casting judgment, but you're casting another option.
Right.
Like which one that I wouldn't have known up until 10 years ago. Like, wait, I have an option? Like I can change my lifestyle, it'll change my health. Like this is mind-blowing.
And remember, we just talked about all the things that can influence your genome. So those were examples of dietary changes you can make that influence the BRCA gene, but you also would have to pay attention to many other things in your environment, right? Chemical exposures, negative emotional exposures, traumas. It's not that you don't have those things, it's that you have to learn how to process and deal with those things. So the nutrition is one key piece of it, but remember, if you have those genetics, you need to work harder than other women do who don't have those genetics in order to prevent the development of cancer. So, back to Kara Fitzgerald's talk. So there was a journal study from Molecular and Cellular Biology Journal, which was called Transposable Elements, Targets for Early Nutritional Effects on Epigenetic Gene Expression. That was published in 2003 by Waterland and Jerdal. So that was a study of epigenetics in mice and how they were influenced by nutrition. So through nutrition, scientists were able to change certain characteristics of the mice, like their fur color and their body weight. So they changed them from an obese body type to a lean body type just through nutrition.
Okay, that I could see. But hair?
Yeah, changed their hair color.
Hair
because
color.
The expression of the genes that typically accompanied the obesity was this like blonde fur color.
Really?
And the expression of the hair color in the lean mice was a brown fur color.
What? This is fascinating.
Mm-hmm. So by changing nutrition, and they selected specific nutrients and fed them those specific nutrients. But they changed the expression of their genetics.
Nutrients? I need to know.
Things like the B vitamins, like folate, and then vitamin C, and
which I'm short in those always because my methylation problem.
No wonder your hair is blonde.
Right?
Just kidding. I'm just kidding. It has nothing to do with like hair color in humans. It's just how that was expressed in those mice.
Oh, that's funny. No, that's funny. That's interesting.
Yeah. So in those mice, in particular, the genes were linked between obesity and fur color, and so they were able to change all of it with this like nutritional changes.
Interesting.
And that's one of the most cited papers in the history of science because it was one of the very first animal studies demonstrating epigenetics, where you could change genetic expression with nutrition.
Thank you. We needed this.
Yeah. So that was one of those very first studies. And then it's since been like studied 1 million times over, right? So other researchers have taken the research by Waterland and Jerdal and researched how many future generations the genetic changes created by nutrients could influence. And the number that they've arrived at is 5 generations. So you can influence up to, this was in animal studies, but up to 5 generations with a single change in nutrients in one parent.
Generation. That kind of got me a little overwhelmed, to be honest.
Whoa. So during World War II, here's an example of where we saw it play out in human populations and not in a controlled experiment, but just in a real life situation. So during World War II, this is interesting because this actually happened in the Netherlands, which was coincidentally the country we were greeting today. But this research that Kara Fitzgerald mentioned, it had nothing to do. It's just the Netherlands was next on our list. And they also happened to be the culture in which we observed this phenomenon. So during World War II, Germany cut off food supplies to the Netherlands, and people there were forced to survive on 500 calories per day or less.
Okay.
So women who were pregnant in the Netherlands during this time gave birth to children with what we call a thrifty epigenome type. So in other words, their bodies were taught in utero to hold on to every calorie they get. And then these individuals, once they're able to get access to normal food, are more prone to things like obesity, diabetes, and every subsequent chronic health concern, even mood disorders like schizophrenia, because in their epigenome, as they were developing, their bodies were taught, because food was restricted, I have to hold on to every calorie I can get. So when you remove people from that situation, then where their epigenome is being influenced by this calorie restriction, and they have access now to normal amounts of food, their body still has that DNA imprint of I'm starving, I have to hold on to every calorie I get. And so those individuals were more prone to obesity and then all of the chronic diseases that accompany it.
Mind-blowing. Okay, so that makes me think of the book Feelings Buried Alive Never Die by a Carol. I forget her last name. It's like a pink cloud book. Anyway, it is so good. And she talks about that, how when you're in uterus that you carry on the psychology of your mom or the chemical brain reactions. Like you get that and then you carry it out. And so then this is fascinating. So it totally is in line with that. Mm-hmm. And then she also is how a part of her book is really cool about how you need to make the choice and then release and then heal and then choose your future. Is that it's a healing book because I love that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. But kind of that would go in line with that. Like it carried you with you from birth and that's how you live. And because it's so subconscious, it's wild.
And not even just those individuals. That change lasted up to 3 generations.
No way. Whoa.
So then they passed the children who were in utero during that time of extreme starvation, then passed that thrifty epigenome onto their children, who then passed it on to their children. So it's
this, when we die and if we get to ask God a few questions, like mine is like kind of that feeling like that, how unfair for those baby. Like they didn't do anything, but they had to, because that generations before with the Germans not giving them food. Like, I am like, that feels so unfair to me. So God, that's a question when I die, but we'll wait till I'm 120 to ask you that.
And everybody has control over it, right? So the subsequent generation, they have control over their epigenome to turn that thrifty epigenome off. You just need to have the tools to be able to do it.
Right. Mm-hmm. So read a book by Feelings Buried Alive by Carol, whatever her name is. She's awesome. It's a good book.
So what are the habits that mess with our gene expression? So the very first one is diet. Yes. Preach. I like that was number one in Kara Fitzgerald's talk. So primarily sugar. Studies have shown how much sugar can mess with our epigenome. In one animal study, a single high glucose meal turned on the genes associated with inflammation, and this effect lasted the full 6-day length of the study and probably beyond. They just only ran the study for 6 days.
Wow.
So one high sugar meal turned on genes associated with inflammation, and then those genes stayed turned on for the entire length of the study.
I hope our renegade listeners by now have noticed that we kind of have a thing against sugar, and I'm so thankful that you have made me a little bit against sugar.
Yes.
Because it's like, it's so true.
Yeah. And remember, this was an animal study, and we've talked about animal studies, how, they're not directly translated into human studies because they have different metabolisms. Yeah. But again, sometimes animal studies are what we have, and then we can form human studies. Yeah. In humans, though, we do see a similar pro-inflammatory response to eating sugar. We know that. Go back and listen to our sugar cereal. Mm-hmm. So eating a high sugar diet increases the biological aging process. That's the takeaway. Mm-hmm. The second habit that influences our aging is poor sleep.
Yes.
Another episode we've covered in we've had a few episodes on sleep actually, and one of them with Dr. Brett Racine is a great episode on getting better sleep tonight. Mm-hmm. So one study of more than 2,000 women showed that insomnia accelerated biological aging. A smaller study showed the same results with measurable cognitive deficits, poor blood sugar control, and detrimental changes to individual circadian rhythms, all attributable to poor sleep. Mm. And of course, being somebody who has suffered with insomnia and poor sleep myself.
Yes, you have, yes.
Yeah, I know how studies and information like that can freak you out, but that's not the objective with sharing that information. The point isn't to get stressed out about the lack of sleep because that only makes the problem worse.
Right.
The point is that we have to prioritize and address our sleep issues and do what we can to work on them. And sometimes it requires pretty drastic lifestyle changes and before you can see improvements in your sleep. So that's not to all the insomniacs I know are like, I already know that it hurts my health.
I'm trying to sleep.
Don't tell me. I'm trying to sleep. But the changes have to be dramatic and you have to prioritize them, right? I literally had to do things like quit my job. Yeah. It wasn't easy. Yeah. And I'm not pretending it's easy. Yeah. I just want you to understand how strongly associated poor sleep is with aging because it lets you make the decision and prioritize. Yes. And maybe you can't do everything at once. Maybe you can't get rid of every bad relationship in your life and get out of a bad job, but maybe you prioritize a 5-year plan.
Yes. And just get closer to that better place.
You're just taking steps one step. My 5-year plan is to 5 years from now have a better job than this, or be I'm in a better relationship,
and even the hope and the control of knowing I will get there. Mm-hmm. The other side of that is that my husband had always slept well, but was having bad sleep, and I was like, it's in your brain, just shut it off, go to bed, right? And then it ended up he actually had Hashimoto's, which affects your sleep. Mm-hmm. So it's another thing too, that your body gives you signs. And I think all through life you need to be looking at signs of what's going on, because that was a big wake up call, pun intended there. But if you're not sleeping well, check in. A healthy, functional body sleeps well. If you're not sleeping well, is it psychological? Is it another health-related hint? So then my husband goes in, he has Hashimoto's, he's doing all these things. Now his sleep is great. Yeah. So there's all of it is connected. I keep saying that, but
the whole body is connected. Yes. Absolutely, yes. And there is definitely hormonal associations with poor sleep. There's dietary associations with poor sleep. There are a lot of things for which poor sleep are a symptom. And I know this because I've researched all of them because I was trying to get to the end of what was causing my poor sleep. Right. And then eventually what I had to land on was for me, it was stress exposure. For a lot of people, it may be stress exposure. It may be because of lifestyle habits. It may be because they're watching TV too late. They're on their screens too late. It may be because of what they're eating and when they're eating it. It may be
they didn't have morning sunlight or 30 grams of protein at breakfast.
It could be because they're consuming alcohol. It could be because they're consuming caffeine. It could be because they have Hashimoto's. There's a lot of things that result in poor sleep. It could be because you have an infection in your teeth, right? Listen to our biological dentistry episode. So there's a lot of things that can result in poor sleep. So that's not to overwhelm you. That's just to help you understand. Again, you have to be paying attention to every aspect of your life. And once I had crossed everything else possible off the list, and trust me, I did for like 2 years.
Yes, you did.
I spent about 2 years trying to cross off every other option. I eventually landed at the fact of like, I'm not going to sleep if I don't leave this job, right? This job is causing me chronic stress. It's not healthy for my body. It's not allowing me to sleep because of the emotional stress that it's bringing on. And honestly, my sleep improved within a few weeks of leaving.
It's like magic.
Leaving that job. And I was like, well, I improved every other aspect of my health first. So
it's worth it.
It benefited me, but...
And that's what it takes. So good job.
Yeah, right. And it's, again, I'm not trying to be flippant about it. That wasn't an easy decision.
Right.
It's not a possible decision for everyone. But there are other things you can also control, which will help.
Right. And at least you could get to a better place.
Yeah, you could get to a better place.
Always better. If not fully cured. Better.
But we're always at the, like, what's the root cause of the problem? And I'm always going to tell it in the fact of you have to deal with the root cause. And if you don't deal with the root cause, you're not going to solve the problem. That's just... the facts. So no judgment, nothing. It's just the facts.
Right. Yes, very true.
Okay, so the third habit that's messing with our epigenome is alcohol consumption. Alcohol messes with our gene expression. It can inhibit the absorption of nutrients that are essential for healthy gene expression. Remember, we saw with that mouse study, you can influence genetics positively or negatively with nutrition for up to 5 generations, and alcohol can inhibit absorption of nutrients. It also inhibits the enzymes required for DNA methylation, which, as we talked about, DNA methylation is one of the most important processes for controlling genes, turning genes on, turning genes off. So I won't dive much deeper into that, but I think we know at this point,
Yeah. I just heard a podcast with Andrew Huberman. It would be one of his latest one. He has an excellent podcast. He did say that up to 2 drinks a week was sort of like that line. Anything above 2 drinks a week was detrimental on your health. So maybe
and I'm sure it depends on what you're drinking.
Yeah, very true, very true. So that's something too of like, if like don't drink every night. Like that's not great, but like on the weekend, okay. And also being aware of your body. And
again, kind of getting into the, like, if you have to have a drink at the end of the day,
check in on your life.
Yes.
Like,
if you're needing that to cope with just your daily life, again, it's not a question of alcohol is harmful. It's a question of
why do you need it?
Why do you need it? Yeah. And that was like one of my favorite things I heard Sarah Gottfried say. She was on Mark Hyman's podcast. I was listening to him talk. She was talking about women's health, and she was saying how hard it is for women when she's like, okay, for hormonal health, you need to not be having a glass of wine. And she was like, how emotional that was for women who were like, but I need that glass of wine at the end of every day. And it was kind of like, okay, then that's an opportunity for you to ask yourself, why do you need it? And check in with what's causing that. Like, what in your life is stressing you to the point that you need alcohol to cope with it? Like, that's a much bigger question.
That is a much bigger, and this is kind of, and I just heard in that with Andrew Huberman, how even the culture, and I'll say this for a mom of young kids, the joke now is I need a bottle of wine. I was just with my kids all day. So when you were saying that, like, what's driving you to drink? And I was like, my kids.
But even that, like, it is cultural, right? It is like cultural. We're kind of taught that. We talked about that in that episode about sugar
and ice cream
after a breakup. Yes. How like so much of what we think we need, like what we need in quotes, comes from us just being told that that's normal or like what we do need. That's the way
to fix it. Like that's what I do. Yeah.
So in that like sugar episode, I shared how like you just see it in TV shows and movies. Like anytime the protagonist goes through this like big breakup, they eat a pint of ice cream.
A tub in a spoon.
And how like when I was 16 and 16 probably, and went through my first like breakup, that was just like my response is like, oh, I need to get a tub of ice cream. Yeah. Just because that's what I've seen.
In a TV show.
So yes, if at the end of the day you feel like you need a bottle of wine, like how much of that is just culturally influence of what we're told is like, yes, kids of course do things that drive you nuts, but why are we being taught that we need alcohol to deal with it? I don't know.
So here's my little quick mama tip, since Eleni, you'll be a mama soon. Mine is, and I swear to you, I have done this my whole life, even with the kids in the bathroom with me. I take an hour bath every single night, and I think I do that instead of my bottle of wine.
Instead of your bottle of wine.
I think it is, because I think
it's a much healthier habit.
Yeah, so everyone start taking baths. Like, I honestly know when I'm in there, my cortisol levels are just dissipating, and I just can feel my nervous system settling down for 1 hour. And I even used to do it with my kids, because, you know, they'll be like, my kids are so young, I can't take a bath. I would put them in their little jumper, and I would, you know, put on whatever to keep them, and I would just soak in the bath for 1 hour. So instead of wine, we're making the change. Take a bath.
Take a bath. The bath is good for you for many reasons.
Yep.
Absolutely. So the fourth unhealthy habit that we have that's messing with our epigenetics is stress.
Absolutely.
And in Kara Fitzgerald's words, specifically, she said, staying in a stressful job. So I have been hounding that point, but that was actually her point, not mine. Good. She said our biological clock is influenced most greatly by the stress hormone cortisol. Research has demonstrated that stress impacts our aging process more than any other variable, possibly including nutrition. Stressful jobs are biological age accelerants. So that was what she was talking about. And we've already talked about that. But stress in general, wherever it's coming from, wherever that chronic stress is coming from, sometimes we can't control it, right? A family member, a loved one is sick. We're the primary caregiver for a family member who's sick. We can't control that stress.
Right.
But we can control every other part of our life in order to help our bodies cope with that stress.
Do anything to help yourself.
Absolutely. But again, just pointing that out one more time. Staying in stressful situations. If you have a choice to remove yourself from that stressful situation, you can positively influence your epigenome.
Yeah.
The fifth one, and this was my favorite, is not cuddling enough.
Oh, really?
Yes, this impacts our epigenetics from a young age. Oxytocin is the chemical, the love hormone, that gets released from loving contact, whether with a pet, a spouse, a parent, our children, or our grandchildren. Genetic expression of oxytocin can be suppressed by depression, stressful experiences, and lack of contact.
This is why I have a dog. I just want you to know that. In fact, this is funny. I was petting it this morning, and I was just like, I love you, Scout. And I was like, I think you've made me happier. I told him that this morning, my little dog. There is something to this. Everyone should get a dog, friends. Everyone.
Cuddle whoever you want to cuddle.
Or cuddle a human. There's that too. Like,
or your chickens.
Or your family. Or your chickens. Like, you do cuddle chickens.
I cuddle my chickens. Yeah. I have cuddly chickens. I have some I literally have a chicken that like wants you to pick her up and will follow you around until you pick her up. And I swear every time I do, it releases oxytocin for the both of us.
For the both.
She's a happy chicken.
I'm equally as happy as you are.
I'm a happy person.
You do have, your chickens act like dogs. Like, they're nice.
They do act like dogs. They are loving. Yes, I love my chickens. But honestly, I think that's such a like fun one for me because I am such a human contact. I'm like a hugger. You know,
are a hugger.
We always
You're
joke
so
about
good.
like being a hugger.
Yeah.
But that is for me my expression of love. It's not everybody's expression of love, but even if it's not your expression of love, physical contact like a hug and a cuddle releases oxytocin, and oxytocin positively affects your gene expression.
Yeah.
If you live alone, and I know that can be tough for people who live alone, then it's the opportunity.
Get chickens. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Well, yeah, get chickens, get a pet, get a dog. But there's other ways too, right? Like maybe you live alone in an apartment. Okay, so go to the local like animal shelter, volunteer, go love the animals there. They need it too, right? Yes. Or invite friends over that you can give a hug to. Like, I'm just thinking of ways to increase your human contact. It doesn't have to be prolonged snuggling, right?
Yes, right.
Like, you don't have to call someone and be like, I'm lonely, come spoon me.
Yes, right.
Like, and freak them out.
There might be apps for that. I don't know. Right.
But it is true that, like, I mean, if you can find a way of like, okay, I'm going to go to the pet store today and I'm going to just go snuggle some puppies. Like, a pet can increase oxytocin like snuggling a loved one. Yep. So I know that sometimes things like that are hard when people don't necessarily feel like they have a lot of love and contact in their life, but go find it. Like, it's everywhere. There are lots of people and animals that need that loving contact too.
Yeah, that's right. And you kind of like, you get what you give. So if you go give some hugs, you'll get some back, and go find someone else who needs a cuddle.
Yeah, exactly. So Dr. Kara Fitzgerald's team did a study profoundly impacting gene expression. They looked at healthy middle-aged men and prescribed a precise diet, exercise, meditation, basic probiotic, greens powder, and snuggle time.
In their prescription.
In their prescription.
Snuggle time.
In 8 weeks' time, these men reduced their biological age by a whopping 3.23 years compared to the control group. So if we extrapolate that data, we can hypothesize that in just 20 weeks' time, so roughly 5 months, following a similar protocol, you could theoretically reduce your biological age by the 7 years that we discussed at the beginning of the podcast that would cut your risk of chronic disease by 50%.
I love it. Okay, go through the things they did again. Cuddling.
Yeah, precise diet, exercise, meditation. So that's the stress factor. Basic probiotic and greens powder.
And cuddle. Mm-hmm. Okay. Wow. Mm-hmm. Okay, I do most of that most of the time. Mm-hmm. Okay.
And it tells you, like, I mean, doing all of those things within 8 weeks reduced their biological age by 3.23 years. So remember, biological age, if we can reduce that by 7 years, we can cut chronic disease down by 50%. So even if you were only doing a few of those things and not all of those things, it's going to have a positive effect on your life. And meditation is one of those tools. We've talked about it in other episodes. Meditation is one of those tools where if you don't have the choice to remove yourself from a stressful relationship, a stressful job, a stressful situation, meditation can help your body cope with that stress. It's a healthy way of managing, releasing, freeing yourself from the negative impacts of that stress, as well as your mindset about it, which, you know, we didn't get into that in this episode. That'll be another episode. But your mindset and how you perceive that stress and how you perceive that stress is affecting your body can also influence the effects it has in your body. So I think whenever you can, look at a situation as an opportunity for growth, as an opportunity for self-exploration, as an opportunity for positive change, rather than looking at it like, oh, I'm so stressed out and that's going to give me cancer. Think about it as like, I'm so stressed out and 5 years from now, the stress is going to be what defined my life story. Right? Like in a powerful way, not in a negative way. But like, I feel that way about the stressors I've been through in my life. They positively impacted my life for the better. They made me a stronger, better person. And in the end, I'm healthier for them. That's all mindset. And that is me telling my genetics and telling my body, you are healthier because of these experiences, instead of, I bet that stress I had 10 years ago is going to give me cancer 30 years from now. Like, I don't tell myself messages like that, right? So we're speaking to our bodies in a positive way, and that influences how we perceive stress and its effects on our bodies too. So.
That is an amazing, healthy mindset, and I'm so glad that we had this little pep talk. This is like a pep talk for my life this week. This is good. And I have a little challenge for our listeners, our renegades. Okay, if we all can, for 8 weeks, do all those things.
That's right.
We're helping out America's health.
Yes.
Like, let's do it. Okay, so say them one more time.
Reducing
Elaine.
The global disease burden. So for all of us, for the next 8 weeks, I like this challenge.
Okay.
Let's focus, because this just says a precise diet, but let's focus on a unprocessed diet.
Okay, we're talking whole real foods.
Whole real foods, minimal sugar, minimally processed. Exercise, whatever makes you happy.
Even like 10, 20 minutes a day of movement.
Whether it's yoga, swimming, walking, jogging, hiking, biking, whatever.
Olympic weightlifting, whatever.
Whatever makes you happy. Yeah. Meditation.
Okay.
Which we're going to do another episode, so listen to that one. I'll walk you through some meditative processes. Mm-hmm. A basic probiotic and greens powder. Those are all very easily attainable.
We can do it.
8 weeks.
Oh, I'm going to have to get another probiotic, but we'll do all the 7 and I'll add in the 8 when I get that. So, okay.
There we go.
I like it. We'll all feel better. We're all getting younger as we go, friends.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you, Elaine.
You bet. And for all of our listeners,
go be renegades.
Go be renegades.
Thank you for listening to the Renegade Nutrition Podcast.
Please keep in mind that this podcast is an educational service that provides general health information. The content on this podcast is not a substitute for direct, personal, professional medical care and diagnosis. You should always talk to your doctor before making a dietary or lifestyle change. Go be renegades!
Go be renegades!